Hey, welcome everyone to Tech Bytes with Tech Scalable. Today we would be discussing about two most popular words in the industry. One is monolithic and another is microservices. And we would also compare both of them. Let's see what's the definition of word monolithic as per dictionary. It states that monolithic is something which is too large or too regular. Something which is not that adaptable to changes, unable to be changed. If we think of our application life cycle, we run through different phases, starting from the design, development. Then once the application is developed, we move on to the testing phase. Once we have tested it well, we package the application. Once the package is ready, we deploy the package to our servers. And once the deployment is done, we start monitoring it. And with time, we need to maintain our application. Could be upgrade, could be downgrade, could be fixing up issues. So our application goes through the entire phase of these different stages and comes out as a single product, right? So if you think about the design phase, the way we design our application categorizes it as monolithic or microservices. If we look at the monolithic architecture, our application's user interface, the data access layer, the logic which accesses the data at the back end, or the business logic, the main brain behind our application, all of them are so tightly coupled that they got to sit together. And we have a database, a central database, which is referenced by each of the single logic residing in this application. So a single database backend for all different types of business logic. If you think of deploying these applications, in monolithic era, we used to deploy them into physical servers. And in case we want to scale them, we had to scale them completely. The entire instance would scale, and that was the bottleneck. Our database scales along with our front end or the business logic, which is the middle tier of the application. So people moved on to the next stage, which is nothing but a multi-tier monolithic architecture. In this, we divided our front-end middle tier from the database. The decoupling was done. Each of the individual components were deployed into separate virtual machines. So if you think about, or you just look across the entire era where we have seen this change from physical servers to virtual machines. The architectural implementation of our application has shifted from monolithic to multi-tier monolithic because our physical servers had a lot of resources and our applications were utilizing very less amount of resources from that physical server. But because if I run multiple applications inside the single server, they don't have isolation capability. That's the reason we were unable to deploy multiple applications onto the single physical server. But when virtual machines came into the picture, we could deploy multiple applications in an isolated environment in separate virtual machines in the same physical server. So imagine that our front end with the business logic, the middle tier logic, is sitting in one virtual machine, and our back end is sitting in another virtual machine, and they can interact with each other. When I want to bundle my application and deploy my application in a different environment, I would have to package them all together. The logic sitting here has to be packaged together, and a single executable gets created out of it, which needs to be deployed. So when we think about a monolithic application, application will produce a single executable as the output. any Java, .NET based applications in the past which we have worked on. It would be associated with the database, the user interface, everything would be clubbed together. They would be tightly coupled. No doubt that they would be self-contained. They don't have any other dependencies and anything to be captured. Everything resides inside the monolithic app. And they are independent. They don't need any support system to work or function. If you think about a food to go type of application, there is a very beautiful book called as Microservices Patterns, written by Krish Richardson. In that, we have a sample food to go type of application in which it tries to depict that if you look at the outer hexagon, the light yellow hexagon here, it depicts that you have your entire application residing inside this hexagon. This is the brain or the logic of your application, which is having multiple functionalities like a restaurant management, delivery management, notification system, payment system, billing system, order management. Everything is bundled together. Even though they are different functionalities, they are sitting together, very tightly coupled to each other. If this logic wants to talk to any backend logics, like your database, then you need an adapter to talk to. I want to talk to the payment service. I have a Stripe adapter. So here, if you see your courier guys, the consumer who's ordering the food, the restaurant guy who's checking what orders he or she has received, everyone is interacting to this application using some REST API or the UI interfaces. So you can think this entire box is a single bundle. This is our monolithic application. And these are the interfaces through which either we are getting into the system or we are interacting with any third-party systems. So if we think about the monolithic pitfalls, we would find that with time, the size of the application grows so much that it slows down our development process. If I'm making any change to a specific logic, say restaurant management, it's going to impact my entire system, that I got to assess each and every logic sitting or residing inside that application. Larger the application, longer is the startup time. The amount of code we are pushing, our application is getting bulkier day by day. And if we think about bulkier application, it's very difficult to implement DevOps, CICD pipelines, saying that we would be doing continuous integration, continuous deployment of our code. It's next to impossible. We need extensive amount of testing, because if I change one part of this application, it may cause impact in any other small services which are running inside that application. And in case we want to scale, it becomes very difficult to scale individual modules. I don't have individual modules. If I have to scale that UI, the business logic, and the data access layer together in that bundle. And when we want to adapt newer frameworks, newer languages, we can't just do that, because my entire system should be compatible with it. So if you're trying to adapt a new framework, it's next to impossible. You can't do that. Your entire application may not be supportive. So if we look at the monolithic applications CI/CD pipeline, even though there are individual teams, those who are sitting and building up these logics, they all are pouring in their code to the same single repository. So you can think this to be our Git repo. And this repository, as and when there is a change, a build gets executed, a build is triggered, and a manual or automated testing, the entire pipeline gets executed. And finally, you deploy the executable. The single executable gets deployed. That makes our system. So this executable is actually as a single block, which is making our system very bulky. And with that, our application changes. Anytime I'm changing my application, it's very difficult for me to redeploy the entire system. I can't say that the order management has a delta change with a new feature. I just go and deploy my order management service. No. It's a single block which has to be deployed. So the entire system gets affected. What's the solution for such type of problems? So solution to my monolithic is to have a loosely coupled type of architecture. That means the services, the order management, the restaurant management, the kitchen management, the courier management, they are individual logics. We can make them sit separate and have loose coupling between them. Not too much of interdependability to be created between them and the logic inside the code, so that we can independently develop them, independently test them, and independently deploy them. Every order management, kitchen management would have its own CICD pipeline, and it can be worked by a small team. This way, we can make our application highly scalable. Individual services could be scaled to the needed number of replicas, and I can independently upgrade them. If I have just order management to be upgraded to the newer version, I can go ahead and do that. But that would happen only when we break out from monolithic to microservices. So monolithic is like a demon, a huge big demon, which has a lot of power. Everything is coupled together, and when it gets deployed, it works well. But maintaining that system and having a beautiful application up and running forever, high availability, high scalability, that becomes a bigger challenge. So we want to break that into smaller microservices, and then individual microservices take their responsibility and play their part to make the entire application to work like a single app. So we would be looking into the next terminology of ours, which is nothing but microservices, but that would be in the next video. Stay tuned for our next video.